Hello, this is David again, and in this video we're going to wrap up markets and market modeling as far as our chapters are concerned. We certainly haven't done a comprehensive study of markets and models, but we're doing enough so that we can understand the research that's later in the book. So let's look at what we started with. We saw there were two types of markets. One's an actual market where you have data from an actual market, and that's what appraisers use. We also saw that a researcher or someone who's trying to study how well this extraction methods work, we can do a hypothetical market. We can create our own market, even add randomness into the market, just like in a real market, pretty well mimic a real market. The difference being we know the answers, so we know how well our extraction method or technique worked. After that, we went down and we made a model, and we did a very limited model. We did 90, I think the last thing we landed on was $94 a square feet for the gross living area, and this was an extremely limited model because we only used one variable. We saw about residuals, that we have residuals, and then we have them as a percentage and an absolute percentage, and we actually studied residuals analysis by looking at residuals here on a chart, and also we put on a table the residual analysis based on 4 specific techniques, or I guess they'd be descriptive statistical techniques. One is the mean average MAPE, or the average of the residuals, the mean deviation, the maximum residual, how wrong can it be, and then how many are positive, kind of negative, and we would want that to be about a 50-50 split. And we saw that $94 was the best, gave us the best, $94. Now, we tried $100 and it was not as good. Now, we did this with a hypothetical market. What was the correct coefficient for gross living area in the hypothetical market? And if we go up, we see it's $100. So $100 is what we use. So here's something that's a little bit odd. So we'll just lay it out and give it just a second for it to sink into our heads. $100 was the real intrinsic coefficient, but the best answer for this model was $94. It was not the adjustment amount. Now, we haven't covered this very thoroughly, but this is one situation, and I know it was an odd model. We, as appraisers, will never use just one coefficient. I'm sorry, one variable. We'll never use just one variable. So it's very limited, but in this one situation, it occurred that it was best not to use the actual intrinsic coefficient to get the best residuals, which is an indication of the best prediction of the subject's opinion of value. We didn't use that. So that's kind of interesting to think about as researchers on this. Now, let's go down and let's write out a couple things. I wrote out the actual adjustment rate intrinsic coefficient is not always the best adjustment rate to use. Now, we don't know how often that's the case. We haven't got into that. But right now, we know there can be situations where it's best not to use the actual coefficient. It's best to use a different coefficient because in this case, it was because of the weakness in the model. Later on, we may see that when you're in a plus or minus 15% randomness in a market, maybe a kind of a rural market, that it's going to be the same thing. It's going to require you not necessarily to use the actual coefficient. It might be best to apply a different one in order to get a better value for the subject property. All right, is the focus, number 2, is the focus the actual adjustment, or is the focus the best opinion of value? And I think we need to think about that a minute, because in this book, all the way through, we are focused on adjustment rates. But we don't want to lose track of the third, that the dog is the opinion of value and the tail is the adjustment rates. In other words, we don't want to get them mixed up. The adjustment rates aren't the end all. The end all is the opinion of value. We want to use the adjustment rates that get us to the best opinion of value. All right. Thank you very much.